Sometimes I wonder what happened to ska. And I know what happened because I lived through it, or at least I was really young when I discovered it. I remember the early days of MTV, sitting up late watching videos and talking to my friends in the neighborhood about what we saw on MTV in those early days. And I remember the first time I ever heard, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do this right. I just remember hearing Ghost Town for the first time and being like, wow, what is this? It was just different from a lot of the other stuff that I was hearing. MTV was dominated by Britpop. Anything that was popular in the UK was all over MTV in those early days because a lot of the American bands and American artists didn't have as many videos to play on MTV. So the UK really dominated the early 80s of MTV. For me, the first time I ever heard anything or was introduced to ska, it was through Ghost Town. And then later on, not far after, it was the English Beat. I remember seeing English Beat videos on MTV. And then later, of course, and Madness. So the Specials, Madness, and the English Beat. Those were the bands that we would see a lot that were representing that style of music. The thing with Ghost Town is so dark. A lot of the ska stuff is more upbeat and dancey, but it has this thing where it's these notes are and I feel like it would be better if I played it right in this area instead. It has more oomph to it. But the thing I remember the most about ska as a bassist, or just when I would hear the bass lines, they always sounded very bouncy. And I'm not gonna sit here and try to recreate all that stuff right now because I don't have time for that, but remember like a lot of these guys, the way they played, especially in those three bands that I mentioned, like even the bass player from Madness, it sounded like he was bouncing a rubber ball on the strings. His playing was so articulate, and the way he would just bounce on those strings, he really did his homework when it came to reggae. And that could be said for all of them. Horace and I don't know why I'm forgetting the rest of the other guys' names, but all those bands like Body Snatchers, who you were hearing me play one of their bass lines at the top of this video. You know, the Body Snatchers, the Selector, they had so many great, iconic bass lines in that music that it's sad that art form is so overlooked today. It had a little bit of a resurgence in the early 90s. A lot of people started getting into it again. People were discovering Operation Ivy after they'd already broken up. So I never got to see Operation Ivy, I'm pretty sure of it, because I believe their whole heyday was around like 87. And they were more like, you know, punk meets ska. So they're like ska punk. But that was the resurgence. And then bands like the Toasters came to town. I saw the Toasters and I think it was 1991 or so. It might've been 91 or 92. I remember the Toasters came to town. The Skatalites, I went and saw them. So ska had this really strong resurgence in the early 90s, but then it quickly, in my opinion, it kind of had an up and down thing. There were bands like, oh gosh, let me try to remember some of these bands, like Dance Hall Crashers, even No Doubt, Goldfinger. I'm just off the top of my head right now. Mighty Mighty Bosstones. Now, I saw Mighty Mighty Bosstones so many times. They're one of those bands that I've seen more than most bands. I would say I've seen Mighty Mighty Bosstones and Testament more than any other bands multiple times. I think I saw the Mighty Mighty Bosstones like 8 times. Anyway, it seemed like when the Mighty Mighty Bosstones settled down and they had their success, which came in the late 90s, like right at the close of the 90s, it seemed like they took ska with them, and they took the whole ska punk, ska pop sound along with them when they left. But those were some fun days and fun concerts to go to see those bands. We had a lot of fun. There was a lot of this dancing that some people want to hate on, but we called it skanking. These things were so much fun, but more than anything for me, it was the bass playing. I loved all of those great bass players who were playing in those bands. I really got an education watching those guys play and seeing how well the command that they had over the bass. So anyway, this is just my quick word, just saying, show a little love to ska, pick up some of this music. I'll put some links down below where you can find that stuff on like Amazon or something. Give that stuff a listen. Like if you really want to like dive into some of course, nothing, reggae is the best. Reggae is awesome, but the ska stuff is great too. Like there are a lot of great bass players in there. And like I said, I'm not naming them all. I was doing a better job of naming the bands rather than the actual bass players because they're escaping me right now. For some reason, Horace is just the main one who really, Horace Panter, I think that was his name. He really stuck out because he was just nuts on that bass. He destroyed the bass. And you watch Dance Craze. That's all I gotta say. Watch Dance Craze and you'll see what I mean. That guy was a monster on the bass, or he is a monster. So once again, I'm curious. Do you guys love ska? Do you hate it? Or are you in between? Do you kind of feel like, I can take it or leave it? Please let me know in the comments below. I would love to have some discussions with you guys about ska, or know about any ska bands or bassists who were playing in that era, even reggae, that you would like to mention. Please mention them in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching this video, and I'll have another one out to you soon.